If you're not getting the growth and performance that you should be from your grow, your watering methods might be to blame. So today, let's go over the 3 most popular options and what they're doing to your roots. Come on, but before we do, today's video is brought to you by Real Growers Recharge. If you want stronger, healthier plants, if you want bigger roots for better fruits, you gotta check out Real Growers Recharge. It's like an instant compost tea that holds more nutrients at your root zone, breaks those nutrients down, and makes them more plant available, getting more of your nutrients into your plants. Find out more about Recharge over at realgrowers.com. And while you're there, use coupon code Scotty420 to get 20% off your first order. Now let's get back to the show. Come on, High C, let's get into it.
Okay, this was the second most intimidating thing to me about growing was knowing when to water, how to water.
Sure.
And when I first got into cannabis, hydroponic deep water culture, bro, scared the crap out of me because it looked like science rather than growing a plant.
It is. It's a science project. It is the fastest way to grow a root system, at least in my opinion. Leave a comment, but I've never seen once deep water culture gets established, the roots go nuts. They'll actually fill out the shape. They'll take the shape of that container, and we talk about what goes on below the ground, fuels what goes on above. Man, the growth rate when a deep water culture system is just screaming and dialed in, I say that's the fastest growth that I've ever seen in a plant.
Okay, now let's talk about deep water culture is kind of like where, actually explain it for people.
It's all it is growing in a bucket. You can have a bunch of buckets together with recirculating, but it's growing in I'll say the simplest one, a 5-gallon bucket, a little bit of water in the bottom, a decent amount of water in there, a few inches, and then you are bubbling that thing up. So it is just, you're using air stones to just provide the perfect amount of air or air to water ratio. I don't know if it's the perfect amount from nature, but it is the most ideal amount to just get the most amount of air or oxygen in your root system and up to your plant. Don't forget the plant's made out of oxygen, hydrogen, a little bit of nutrients, carbon.
And usually it's not actually sitting in any kind of media or soil or anything, right?
It is. I used to do this where I'd have a little bit of water in the bottom and I would just have a bunch of air stones. And I used to have this giant regenerative blower that just blew a crazy amount of air. We had it set up to 99 plants, but we had a couple big air stones in there. And what it's doing, it's aerating that water. So that water is super oxygenated. A plant can't normally sit in water, but when the water is that oxygenated, yes, it can. And like I said, the growth rate is crazy, man.
But the plants themselves, the roots are in the water, but the plant itself, it's not in any kind of media or soil or anything.
Nothing. And it'll take the shape. This will kind of a little bit relates, but it'll take the shape of that bucket is what it does. It's not reaching for anything. The plant doesn't need any water or nutrients. It's being bathed in them, so it doesn't want to expand out. You're not going to get those big, big long roots. You're going to get roots that take the shape of that container, and they don't have to reach for anything. So it's really efficient. And until you have a power failure, you're loving this thing. Until your air stones clog up, you're loving this thing. It's just got some Achilles heel weak points. If you have a power failure, I just tried to do something very reliable and it just didn't work. If you have something like that, man, you have hours until your plants die.
Well, and I've also seen one plant get sick, and then every plant that's in the same system gets sick.
They call it DWC is deep water culture. RDWC is recirculating deep water culture. You can do deep water culture, call them bubble buckets, but just put an air stone, $10 air stone with a $10 air pump, or get a bigger one. The more air you give these things, the higher performance with deep water culture. But yeah, you can do it singularly with one single 5-gallon bucket, or what I used to do is just daisy chain them all together so you can run off one reservoir. I'm lazy, man.
No, I've seen that system though, and that's when I saw one plant get sick, and then every plant got sick.
And by the way, it is so easy when you have no media, you have no microbes to colonize those roots and protect them. So like root rot, when a little bit of root rot comes in, boom, you go there one day and 20 plants are dead, then the other 20 plants are dead, and then you're hydrogen peroxiding your roots, which isn't really supposed to be done, and all of a sudden you just go, why am I doing this? I'm working too hard, man. So if you have the kind of personality where you've got everything dialed in and perfect and you practice like cleanliness and all that, then deep water culture is fun. It's how I started growing, and I think it was a mistake for me because I treated the plant like a science project. So I understood you put 2 of these air stones in and you get 1 of these pumps and you turn it up to that. Then you put the grow, micro, and bloom in and you'll get big buds. I never really understood how a plant uptook nutrients and a lot of the things that make me a better grower when I started treating the plant like a plant.
Okay, let's shift things in the complete opposite direction now. The second way of watering your plants, you've got here cyclical watering.
Cyclical irrigation, if you look online or you look at a lot of what the pros are doing, this is one of the most high performance methods you can have while still having a media. The pros are probably not going to risk having everything perfect in their grow and go medialess and show up one day and they go, hey man, you flipped the circuit breaker overnight and now that room is dead. So deep water culture is fun for a science experiment, but having a media is huge. Even if it's rock wool, sometimes they'll use rock wool. With cyclical irrigation, cyclical on cycles, you'll take a plant that has a pretty small root zone. I guess you could do it with any plant, but you say, how much water is it going to need a day? It's going to need a gallon of water a day. I'm going to give it 1/10 of a gallon 10 times a day. Okay. And what it does, if you have the right amount of water going, or nutrient water going in there, and you have the right media, it saturates it. And it partially saturates it to where it's at that perfect level. And then the idea is it dries back a little bit. Remember, we talked about stress is good for a plant?
Yeah.
What they're trying to do is get it to fill out the media as quick as possible. The rock wool cube or the 1 gallon.
Get the roots to fill it out?
Yes. So what they're doing is they're stressing it a tiny bit. They allow this dry back. Cannabis it doesn't want it to be over wet. It wants to be somewhat dry. So they're allowing this dry back 10 times a day. So 10 times a day, it's going from perfect moisture to a little dry, perfect moisture to a little dry. And what that does, it gets the roots to go out and seek more surface area. That's why a deep water culture plant looks like, takes the shape of the container. And then if you have a 1 gallon, I guess they still take the shape of the container, but like a rock wool or something like that, it will reach out the bottom.
So the dry back, once it's dry, that tells the plant, hey, you need to find some water, and that triggers the roots to go out and grow more?
Yeah, it's a little stress trick to get the roots to grow more. If you're trying to get the roots to grow in, fill out a 1 gallon container in veg, it is theoretically probably the best way to do it, theoretically, okay?
Okay.
It's a lot of work. Think about it. Now you're dealing with drippers, and drippers are made out of, I believe it's 1/8-inch line. It's very thin line. You get just a little, growth of nutrient in there or something like that. It's growing in that line.
Or just a little bit of buildup of anything.
Yeah. Now you got one, and if you're doing that commercial grow with the trellis and the plants in the middle, you don't know if you got a plant in the middle. It's got a clogged up line, and it's only getting a little bit of water 10 times a day. So it's a big deal, man. So it's really cool. For me, it has some Achilles heels that I'm not willing to deal with.
Okay, so I used to try something similar to this without a dripper. I just used my watering can, and I tried to do it 3 or 4 times a day, just a little bit.
How much?
About a third or a fourth of what I would need.
Guess what? As soon as you say about, that cyclical irrigation goes out the window because it's precise.
Okay.
You're doing okay. It's 1/10 of a gallon, 1/12 of a gallon. Don't ask me what that is. 1/10 of it. I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? But just ounces, and it's done, just in a specific way with drippers. It's just, again, it's real science, man.
Right. Okay, so now I found a much easier way to do it. This is what you got me hooked on this, and I'm never going back. Let's talk about self-irrigating planters.
Yeah. First off, there's a guy named Gabe Brown, and he says he's a great grower, and he says, you got to get lazier, man. That's a great line, all right? So I figured out the sip buckets. You know, I've been working on them for years. Shout out to a guy named Hempy that I saw a recipe online for them. But it's the best of both worlds, okay? It's a media, but that media always stays at the ideal moisture level. It's not you're missing the... I was thinking about it, maybe 10% difference in growth if you're allowing a dry back of 10 or 12 times and doing all that precision. Yeah, you might get a little boost in growth. Is it worth it compared to the reliability issues? You know, there you get one dripper that goes and your plant's dead. For me, I can leave for the week. You know, I've got a reservoir that is keeping this sip bucket at the perfect moisture level. And basically what a sip bucket is a bucket inside of another bucket. And the inside bucket doesn't go all the way down. It's a little bit shorter. And then they use some kind of wicks. If you look online, some of them are actually rope wicks. I use the cocoa core. I've got some legs that go down there and they wick up from the bottom bucket. But the idea is if you build your soil right, like that's why I love cocoa. It's so forgiving. It performs super high when it's fully saturated. Some folks like to put a little bit of perlite in there. But the idea is if you build your soil right, so as it wicks up and it's completely saturated, the soil or the media, I should say, because most of it's cocoa, is able to hold the right amount of moisture. And that's why cocoa is such an amazing grow media, because while it's saturated, it still holds a bunch of air, and that's what we want.
All right, so just to make it clear, with the sip bucket, instead of watering from above, it's got a reservoir that's feeding water into the bottom of the outer bucket, and then it's slowly wicking that water up into the inner bucket.
Yeah, and I do want to say, as much as I just said, you might get a slight performance increase if you're doing cyclical watering, maybe a 10% increase or so. I don't know. I might take that back, because what was the first thing we talked about was deep water culture, right?
Yeah, and they're always in the water.
It's always in the water. It's always in that ideal range. Now, granted, it is getting heavily aerated, but there is no dry back there. The only one of these that we talked about a dry back was the middle one, and that's because they're trying to fill out a container as quick as possible.
But even without the dry back in the deep water, it still blows those roots out.
Yeah, because it's 100% of the time. It's perfect. You know, you just got those perfect conditions, and it's the same with cocoa in a sip bucket. You might not be getting the amount of oxygen, the amount of air in the cocoa, but man, you are getting a high performance system that always is holding a great amount of air and a great amount of moisture. Hey, but those are just the best ways that I know how to water plants. I choose the sip buckets for simplicity and reliability. But come on, what about you? How do you water your plants? And how's the performance? Come on, let me know in the comments. If you dug this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video with another grower you know, and check out the other couple videos YouTube's recommended. We think you'll dig them.